Fox 45 News uncovers questionable spending by Safe Streets.
The money's originating from the taxpayers' pockets.
A breakdown on what they're buying with your tax dollars. A warning to drivers of a new online trend making it easier for criminals to steal cars. New tonight, we show you how they can use a quarter to start and drive off with your vehicle. The impact of wraparound services in the city coming into question. Our team examines what those services are and if they're worth the cost. A mother struggles to keep her daughter out of trouble.
It definitely has me feeling like I'm a bad mom sometimes, but I know I'm not.
Fox 45 News shines a light on her pleas for help.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Hamas continues to use civilians as human shields. Something that's not new, something that they've always done.
As the war in Israel continues, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is commenting on some of the atrocities happening in the country. He spoke about Hamas using civilians as human shields, calling it pure evil.
And he says that civilians are not the target of Israel's military operations, but believes Hamas is targeting civilians in the onslaught.
Thank you for staying with us tonight. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. The death toll in the war has gone up. At least 1,300 Israelis and 1,400 Palestinians are dead.
And we continue to see disturbing images out of the Middle East. A warning, the videos you're about to see are hard to watch.
At least 27 Americans have fallen victim to the war, with 14 still unaccounted for. As the violence rages on, there are now concerns over a ground invasion in Gaza.
In his remarks today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas needs to be treated the same way as ISIS.
No leader should meet them. No country should harbor them. And those that do should be sanctioned.
And as fighting intensifies, Israel has mobilized 360,000 reservists. The army is mobilizing near the Gaza border.
At the White House, officials say they have no plans to put U.S. troops on the ground in Israel. White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says the Israelis have made it clear they don't want foreign troops on their soil. He says the Israelis have a capable force, and the United States will do everything it can to improve those capabilities.
U.S. officials are also announcing there will be charter flights for all American citizens and their families in Israel to leave starting tomorrow. The logistics for these flights have not been revealed just yet.
Fox 45 News will continue to bring you the latest on the war. Later this hour, we hear from an Israeli in Baltimore who lost a loved one in the conflict. You can follow along on air and online at foxbaltimore.com.
Fox 45 News tracking how city agencies are spending your tax dollars. Wraparound services meant to help those in the city are now being put into question.
Thousands of dollars spent on shoes, clothes, and trips to Los Angeles. Some of the receipts from Safe Streets, Fox 45 News is uncovering. We have team coverage starting with Mackenzie Frost, who investigates the Safe Streets program. Mackenzie has the latest spending details in a story you'll see only on Fox 45 News.
New details into how the city's flagship gun violence prevention program is spending taxpayer dollars. Included in the hundreds of pages obtained by Fox 45 News, receipts from Catholic charities for the Safe Streets sites it manages. The
audit process to include Monzi, but he never did. And that brings us to our question of the night. Should there be an independent audit of Monzi? So far, 96% of people who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Fox 45 News is following how your taxpayer dollars are being spent for wraparound services in the city and what kind of impact they're having. Fox 45's Jeff Abel continues our team coverage tonight. Jeff?
You know, a key part of the mayor's crime-fighting strategy is the deployment of these wraparound services. They are not cheap, and tonight there's debate about whether they really are working. Throughout the state, lawmakers are wrapping their heads around some old services with a new name.
Everyone mentioned high-fidelity wraparounds.
High-fidelity wraparound services. High-fidelity wraparound. When they implemented high-fidelity wraparound.
Give me some examples of that.
Initially, wraparound services were designed to support problem children and their families. But lately, these services have been used to help problem adults, too.
These things that an individual needs to make them whole.
And in Baltimore, the list of government-sponsored wraparound services keeps growing. There are services that fund families and feed families, others that provide shelter and legal aid. And the price tag to supply these services hovers at just more than $274 million. About half of it is funded by government grants.
Around mobilization, wraparound supports, and coordination.
The city has relied on these services to support those impacted by crime. But not everyone is convinced the remedy is working.
I don't think it's directly driving down crime.
The expansion of these services has become a cornerstone of the mayor's crime-fighting strategy. In a statement, the mayor's office defended them today, writing, "The positive impact of providing wraparound services to communities in need has been repeatedly supported by public health research." But community leader Giovanni Patterson isn't convinced. He believes the strategy, which many cities are now deploying based on a national model, is failing to solve a problem, which he believes the city could solve itself.
It's almost like an outside approach to trying to fix problems here when the solutions to a lot of what's going on in our communities are right here in Baltimore. If you ask the people, just ask the people.
If you'd like more research on these services, you can find our research at foxbaltimore.com. We're live tonight, Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Baltimore City businessman Bob Wallace is now officially running for mayor of Baltimore City. Wallace ran as an independent candidate back in 2020. This time, he's running as a Democrat. He spoke with Fox 45 News about that decision last month after he launched an exploratory committee.
And I think running as an independent, I think there were situations where people could not hear my message. And I felt that it was important to remove all the barriers so that the voters of Baltimore could hear my ideas and could hear the vision that I have for the city.
Well, the latest Goucher College poll shows voters are looking for somebody new to lead the city. Just 27% of voters say they would re-elect Mayor Brandon Scott. 39% said they would vote for Sheila Dixon, former mayor of Baltimore, who formally entered the race last month. 23% say they would prefer another candidate. Fox 45 News spoke with political analyst John Deedy about what Wallace's campaign means for the mayoral race.
He could split some of the vote. There is a lane for him to get a lot of votes and persuade other people. The thing is, he's going to have to spend a lot of money for name identification, because he may have gotten that 20% of the vote for basically, okay, I don't like Scott, I'll vote for whoever else this guy is.
Well, John Deedy mentioned that Bob Wallace garnered about 20% of the vote in the last election. Brandon Scott beat Sheila Dixon in the 2020 primary by less than 2% of the vote. Deedy says it's too early to tell who Wallace might draw votes away from.
Right now, it's up in the air who it helps or hurts, because most of the voters don't even know who Bob Wallace is. So once he defines himself, and that's the key thing, define who you are. Don't let Brandon and Sheila define who you are, or you're going to lose.
Deedy says the most important thing for Wallace to do is to get out in front of the voters so they recognize his name. Fox 45 News will continue to follow the mayoral race and the other elections that matter to you. You can find our past reporting on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, a mother's at her wit's end when it comes to her teenage daughter. Her calls for help and change from the state. Plus, a new social media trend means young people can steal a car with just a quarter. What you need to know to protect your vehicle.
Another nice day, but not quite as warm as we head into tomorrow. I'm going to let you know when rain and highs only in the 50s could be in our forecast. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.
And right after the break, a push to get tougher on drug dealers. How elected leaders want to crack down on drug deals that end in death. Interim State Superintendent of Schools Dr. Carrie Wright says she wants the job permanently. In her first press conference today, Dr. Wright said she's applying for the full-time position beginning in July of next year. Dr. Wright was brought in to replace State School Superintendent Mohammed Chowdhury, who resigned earlier this month following a series of Project Baltimore investigations that raised concern over his leadership. Those concerns include the decision to heavily redact state test scores, making less information available to the public. Dr. Wright called the state's math scores abysmal and said, as a public servant, she plans to be open and transparent.
I think we need to be very transparent with our data. I think we need to be transparent with what we're finding is working and is not working. So I'm glad you asked that.
Dr. Wright previously worked in Prince George's, Howard, and Montgomery County Public Schools here in Maryland. Most recently, she served as Mississippi State Superintendent, where she is credited with making major improvements in literacy rates. In the coming weeks, Project Baltimore will take a closer look at how she did it and whether it could work here in Maryland.
Carroll County State's attorney wants to get tougher on drug dealers and enact harsher penalties in deals that result in death. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker has the details.
It's a nationwide epidemic.
It's really a burgeoning problem, and I don't see it abating anytime soon.
Opioid overdose deaths, largely driven by fentanyl, are impacting communities small and large.
And we're seeing it here as well.
Carroll County State's Attorney Haven Shoemaker says they're no exception.
Fact is, of the overdoses that have happened in 2022 and 2023, almost all of those are attributable to fentanyl.
In Maryland last year, there were 2,586 deadly overdoses. Fentanyl was involved in nearly 80% of them.
In Carroll County, in May of last year, we had a young lady who was 18 years old. Her name was Victoria Garofalo, and shortly after buying drugs from an individual, and she died of a fentanyl overdose. And there's very little that we could do to the individual who sold her those noxious chemicals.
In Pennsylvania, where there were nearly double the overdose deaths last year compared to Maryland, lawmakers are looking to enact harsher penalties in drug deals that result in death. With Senate Bill 235, also known as Tyler's Law, in remembrance of 18-year-old Tyler Shanafelter, who overdosed and died from fentanyl-laced Percocet. Shoemaker says Maryland should follow suit, and he's spoken with at least one lawmaker who agrees.
This bill would be patterned after the bill that the Pennsylvania Senate just passed on October 2nd, would impose a mandatory minimum of 10 years and a fine no less than $15,000 for selling drugs that result in someone's death.
Right now, Shoemaker says they can only charge dealers with possession with intent to distribute. Adding manslaughter is often too tough a case to make.
If Pennsylvania can do it, I think it's high time that we did something like that here and get justice for folks like Victoria who I just spoke about.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Well, the Carroll County State's attorney not just calling for Annapolis to make changes to state drug policy, he is also demanding lawmakers address the juvenile crime crisis.
We're seeing like a revolving door. The same juvenile offenders over and over again, coming in the door and then going back out the door to continue to engage in their nefarious activities. There's not a whole lot we can do about it because we're hamstrung by the laws that are in place.
Shoemaker is one of more than a dozen state's attorneys from across the state calling for an overhaul of juvenile justice system in Maryland. In total, the group represents more than 5 million people, about 87% of the state's population.
House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. If you'd like to contact them about public safety legislation, their phone numbers and email addresses are on your screen.
Well, still ahead tonight, 25 cents for a car worth thousands of dollars. A new viral trend means people can steal someone's vehicles with just a quarter.
A breakup almost ends in murder. I'm Alexa Ashwell, and this week's Maryland's Most Wanted, the search for a suspect who investigators say set fire to her ex-boyfriend's apartment while he was still inside. And the months-long search for an alleged gang member comes to an end. Those details coming up.
And guess what? We've got an eclipse that's happening this weekend on Saturday, an annular, I'll get that out, eclipse that's happening. And basically you have the ring of fire. In other words, the moon going right in front of the sun, and you have still some of the sun showing. Now, the bad news for us, yes, that annular eclipse is going to be happening well down to our south and west. That's where the totality is going to be over places like New Mexico and Arizona. Plus, we're going to have rain, so don't expect to see much. But in 2024, April, we actually have one coming close by, and that's a total eclipse. Hopefully the weather's going to be better by then. I'm going to let you know when we get out of the 50s and rain over the weekend. My Weather Authority forecast.
All right, Jonathan, stop that rain talk, because it's not happening right now, young man. As we head to break, we're taking another live, beautiful look at the Inner Harbor and that domino sugar sign, folks. As we're heading to break, we'll be back in a moment.
The road through postseason baseball on Fox 45 is sponsored by Johns Hopkins Children's Center.
Not exactly breaking news here, but the Orioles are out of the playoffs and postseason play. All right, we know that. Captain Obvious here, I get it.
Yep.
But the team is taking their loss and using it as motivation for next season,
They
Mary.
definitely are. Morgan Atzett's here with a look back at this season. Morgan.
We're just twisted it for fans even more. There's been time for the Orioles to process and step away from the 3 games against the Rangers in the ALDS, but the O's poor October outing and abrupt ending courtesy of postseason exit by the first sweep all season is still very fresh 2 days later. Players, well, they're long gone. Some will not be back next season, and a young core will, with prospects expected to join them in 2024. For manager Brandon Hyde and GM Mike Elias, they have to wrap their minds around from 101 wins, AL East title, to 0-3 in the postseason, a disappointing ending to a remarkable season.
It's a round bat and a round ball and a round earth that we live in, and sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way, and I think that happened for a lot of our guys, but they did everything they could to gear up and prepare for it, and I'm very, very proud of this group.
It was a really successful season, and overcoming so many odds and obstacles that are against us, and so many people thinking that we weren't going to be a playoff team, and all of a sudden we win 101 games and win the American League East. I mean, that's says a lot about a lot of people. Unfortunately, the postseason we just didn't play our best, and ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw. But I'm going to have great memories of this team.
The result really came down to starting pitching. Brandon Hyde saying the starters cannot get bounced and create multiple run holes by the second inning. That was too much in this postseason for the Orioles to recover, and the Rangers took full advantage. Now, as the Birds head to the offseason, pitching, you would think, has to be at the forefront of Mike Elias's mind.
Morgan, thank you. Hey, remember, you can still follow the latest postseason action with the Rip and Rock podcast. Rocco DeSangro and Ryan Ripken break down every playoff matchup with new episodes every Monday. You can stream them anywhere you get your podcasts. And we're your exclusive home for the 2023 World Series. Classic begins Friday, October 27th. You can catch all the action right here on Fox 45.
And all the O's are no longer in the race for the World Series. Baltimore fans still showing their support for the O's after an impressive season, clinching their first AL East title in 9 years. Lisa sent this picture of the flag flying outside her house, which she says was up all season. And we want to see how you're celebrating the O's impressive season. Share pictures and videos of you and your favorite O's gear, or really any picture related to the O's. You can make your submissions at foxbaltimore.com/chime-in or on our app.
I know that the story of him dying, he did not die in vain. I know that he fought like a lion.
Coming up after the break, the conflict in the Middle East is having international impact. How a local business owner is looking to bring awareness.
Plus, the juvenile crime crisis prompting pleas for help. Fox 45 News hears from parents who are demanding change.
Fox 45 News is following three big stories at 10:30.
The ongoing conflict in the Middle East continues to take the lives of innocent civilians on all sides. The major move that could be coming tomorrow.
Juvenile crime has parents across the state on edge. Fox 45 News speaks to a mother begging for help to keep her child out of the chaos.
Plus 25 cents for a car worth thousands, an alarming new car theft trend you need to be aware of. And we begin there. Over 8,000 cars have been stolen in Baltimore so far this year. That is up 229% from last year.
And a lot of those cars, Hyundais and Kias, were swiped following a TikTok challenge showing how to steal them. Now Baltimore police are warning of a new way those cars can be stolen.
Fox 45's Vincent Hill explains.
According to the latest video that's going viral, all it takes is a quarter to steal a Hyundai or a Kia. A new viral Hyundai and Kia challenge.
I started watching the video
that Baltimore police are sounding the alarm on.
Individuals have figured out a way to use a simple quarter to turn on vehicles. So it is something that is out there in the stratosphere now.
And all you need is a quarter.
A quarter used to start a Kia, as seen in this video.
My youngest brother, actually, somebody tried to steal his Kia.
Fox 45 showed the video to Jessica.
Oh, wow. You can use a quarter to steal a car. I think that's very wrong considering how much money they make us pay for these cars. I have a Chevy for that very reason.
This as Fox 45 has heard from countless victims of Hyundais and Kias from the previous TikTok challenge that used a USB port to start the cars.
When he got in the car, I mean, he was in there about a minute.
It happened in a matter of 60 seconds, not even.
I was so upset. It just feels like a violation.
That challenge already costing victims thousands of dollars.
You can see the steering column was broke.
We also showed the new challenge video to David.
Cars don't steal cars.
He's hoping the city does something to get an already large problem under control.
The mayor is going to sue car companies. I think they should crack down on crime.
Now, we haven't been able to verify if any Hyundais or Kias have been stolen using a quarter, but BPD says this new trend is on their radar. In Baltimore, Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Well, carjackings and auto thefts are just some of the crimes we are seeing young people commit. And now a frustrated Baltimore County mother is speaking with Fox 45 News, saying she's at her wit's end.
I feel like they should be held accountable. It's got to be some consequences. You're not going to learn if you're getting a smack on the hand. You're not going to learn.
Well, the mom says her 13-year-old daughter keeps acting out, getting suspended from school and running away. And now she's worried things will escalate, fearing the teen could become another statistic of the state's juvenile justice system. Fox 45's Amy Simpson spoke with the mom and has her calls for change.
In eastern Baltimore County.
She's 13 and she's in 7th grade.
This mom says her daughter needs a wake-up call.
It definitely has me feeling like I'm a bad mom sometimes, but I know I'm not.
This mother of 4 not sharing her name or face, but says her daughter is already on her 2nd suspension of the school year after 5 or 6 suspensions last year.
Anytime she does anything, I have a trail of emails.
Her teen daughter, she says, frequently walks out the door, runs away, sometimes brought back with a knock on the door.
She was brought back yesterday by the police officers.
The teen even just recently shared on social media as a missing person. And while this Essex woman says her daughter has never been arrested, she fears the bad behavior could escalate, echoing parental concerns about the lack of juvenile consequences.
I mean, if nothing is done with the behavior now, and this is minor behavior, you know, I'm worried about her future. Our youth is doomed if nothing gets done with just minor behavior like running away.
Desperate for help, this mom says she's researched boarding schools, wanting more discipline and structure for the young teen.
One boarding school I called, they said $9,000 a month, and I just hung up.
Just this week, creating a fundraising page, trying to raise $40,000 for boarding school, fearing for her daughter's future. I do not want her to become another statistic in jail, raped, killed, or a victim of human trafficking, she wrote in part. For now, this mother says she's left to bargain with the 13-year-old to stay put.
I'm gonna give you the phone and the Wi-Fi password, just don't leave my house.
Before things go from bad to worse.
Basically, she can do what she wanna do. There ain't no consequences.
Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
This isn't the first time we've talked with a worried mother in the Baltimore area. In September, a mother spoke with Fox 45 News saying her daughter was stealing cars without consequences.
They need to stop making excuses. They need to start locking these kids up. They need to change the laws. They're teenagers. They know what they're doing. They know right from wrong. I don't know what to do. We tried everything, literally.
In April, Fox 45 News spoke with a mother who moved her family out of Baltimore after a 12-year-old was shot and killed. She says she reached out to other parents about her concern, but few were interested.
This is getting crazy, and I'm recognizing that the parents care more about going out to clubs, partying. I've been pounding the streets with this situation with other parents.
And as concerns are growing over the youth crime crisis, the danger is finding its way into the classroom. 2 students brought loaded handguns to school in separate incidents just this week. In Baltimore City, a 15-year-old brought a loaded handgun to Joseph Briscoe Academy. Officials say the 7th grader threatened to get the weapon following an argument with a staff member. When he returned, city school police confiscated the firearm and took the student into custody. And in Baltimore County, a student brought a loaded handgun to Sparrows Point High School. Officials sent a letter home saying the student was taken into custody. Students bringing guns to schools, has been an ongoing and growing issue across our region. Maryland State Police FOP President Sergeant Clyde Boatwright says it comes down to access and accountability.
We need to get to a point where people that are making the choice to arm themselves and bring it to the school have an immediate penalty.
Next month, lawmakers will hold a hearing into juvenile crime. 2 laws are at issue. The Juvenile Justice Reform Act limits children 13 and under from facing most charges, and the Child Interrogation Act prevents police from questioning juvenile suspects without attorney and parent permission. Trust Fox 45 News to bring you complete coverage.
If you look at this in proportion to the size of Israel's population, this is the equivalent of 10 9/11s.
The Hamas terror attack on Israel is drawing comparisons to the September 11th terror attacks in the United States.
As of tonight, the U.S. death toll has risen to 27, with 14 Americans unaccounted for. That's U.S. deaths. The U.S. government will start evacuation flights for Americans in Israel very soon. This as Israeli Defense Forces pound Hamas's infrastructure in Gaza. At least 2,700 people have died on both sides, and Hamas is believed to be holding about 150 hostages.
A threat from a former head of Hamas calling for protests in the streets tomorrow around the world.
As missiles rain down in Gaza, we're also hearing more calls for others to join the fight as we learn new details about how we got to this point. Christine Frizzell brings us the latest.
A
former head of the terror group Hamas designating Friday, October 13th, the day of jihad, calling on Muslims to take to the streets and deliver a message of anger. Also urging Muslims in neighboring countries like Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt to join the fight against Israel, already a major concern for the West.
We're also worried about jihadist groups like in Syria. We have the Iran-backed Shia militia groups in Iraq, and you have all sorts of jihadist groups. That is our worst nightmare.
The massacre in Israel apparently planned for 2 years. Another Hamas leader admitting in an interview with Russia TV that under the guise of providing welfare, Hamas was actually planning for warfare.
في غزة وبدها تدير بالها على 1.5 مليون فلسطيني وملتهية وخلص تركت المقاومة لكن حماس من تحت الطاولة.
The interview, translated by the group Memory, a Middle Eastern research institute co-founded by Israeli Americans, also included a demand members of Hamas detained in the United States be released.
We obviously take seriously our responsibilities to get Americans held overseas back with their families. We have in the past entered into negotiations to do exactly that. And we have not foreclosed any option right now in terms of these particular hostages.
These developments come as Israel has pounded Gaza for days, including at places of worship, schools, and refugee camps. Retaliation for what Hamas calls the Al-Aqsa flood operation, the brutal murder of men, women, and children in Israel. It says it carried out in response to decades of violence against and oppression of Palestinians. A vicious cycle with no end in sight. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
The ongoing conflict in the Middle East is having an international impact. Here at home, a Baltimore business owner is fearing for his family and mourning the loss of a friend in Israel. Today, Fox 45 News sat down with Eden Zamirit, who says his sister and 4 young children have told him they're taking shelter from at least 30 to 40 missile attacks. As a former IDF soldier, he also has many friends forced back to the front lines. One of them lost his life during the first day of the attacks.
One of the soldiers sent me, hey, sorry to tell you, but Nakche got killed. I crashed. I don't cry a lot, almost ever. And for 3 days, every half an hour, I would go to the side that my kids and my wife won't see and just cry.
Well, he says he's now doing all he can to help from afar, including raising funds for tactical gear for his former unit and also raising awareness.
Taking a live look at Capitol Hill tonight in Washington, D.C. after another twist in the search for a new House Speaker. Nominee Steve Scalise, who Republicans selected just yesterday, has dropped out of the race after he was unable to get enough votes to win the gavel on the House floor. It's not clear who will the next nominee be. It comes as Congress is getting closer to another government funding deadline on November 17th. Well, still had a breakup gone wrong results in a fiery exchange. Alexa Ashwell has this week's Maryland's Most Wanted.
And another crisp and clear night for us coming our way with temperatures dropping down into the 50s, even the 40s by early tomorrow morning. I'm going to let you know when that rain chance is going to be coming way up, though, with some much cooler temperatures. It's in my Weather Authority forecast.